Really? Ah, there we go. Hello, this is just fine. So today we're just gonna be doing a usual setup, taking a look at the bot, its goals, some of the reasoning behind the bot, and maybe a little bit of casuals. And today I will be training my meanies on this bot, although that's not the purpose of it. The main purpose is obviously, along with f.a.n.g. matchup, I think it's supposed to help with general defensive capacity. So, working out when you should throw is probably the main one that I'll be working on, and when I can punish things safely. So, the goals for this bot are pretty simple. The first goal is obviously that you get a point for throwing him without getting thrown. He gets a point if he throws you, I think. Ah, okay.
That's probably better. No change to you, but the stream can hear me well now, probably with some echo. So, from there, basically, yes. The first thing you have to understand about this bot is it's going to try to throw you. And there's specific spacings where it does this. And if you want, you could even, like, respond to the 5 action, but the throw is at the very beginning of that action, so it's rather hard to make sure that you don't get thrown without just mashing throw yourself. This is actually the hardest type of points to get, and therefore why I mentioned it first actually. He will attempt to throw at particular spaces, and you in turn should try to detect the throws that he uses. This is an advanced thing for this bot, and in general, in order to get really good at this game, you have to be able to read when your opponent is going to try to throw. Now, this bot is random in the sense that obviously it's not repeating itself when it throws, but there is a specific timing for it attempting this. And you have to figure this out. Figuring it out is in itself one of the best ways to understand mobility and the way that f.a.n.g. moves itself. And there's some other hidden stuff in there as well.
So the second point we got is punishing Sotaja, which is his sleeve thing, apparently. I have not seen him do it at all on this.
This version of the bot might be a little low on it, and you'll probably need to change one of the recordings in order for that to happen. But it shouldn't be too hard to do. It's just a matter of the strangeness of certain inputs that the game requests. We recently recognized that in order to do a trickery with the forward heavy, well, down forward heavy punch and still have it turn into a Soto Jazz sometimes, you need to actually input it slightly differently. But because this input is not particularly hard to do for most people, I wouldn't worry about it. And you can change it when you feel like you've gotten the hang of the other movements, because it doesn't change him too much overall. And it doesn't really mess with his rhythm that much. You can, in fact, focus on dealing with that forward heavy punch thing he does as if it's the same. And we'll just fix the bot a little bit when it's further in.
Oh, interesting. And I do not have much Fang matchup, so I'm personally just learning him while I do this as well. So, I mean, I have some Fang experience, but I mean, as much as you can get for playing this game for a year and a half with as little as people play him online, but...
Well, you do also have some from fighting me occasionally, so that does matter. While I am not a setup sort of Fang, I do have enough understanding of the character to make an attempt at neutral. The final thing that you are supposed to do with this bot is get around the Ryobenda if he drops it. Because
what do you mean by
dealing with
drop?
Ryobenda...
Do you mean...
No, I mean when he does it, sorry.
Okay.
It is sometimes difficult to get over or deal with Ryobenda directly. And that can be an important thing to learn in the matchup, because otherwise you can't feel confident against him. He has it out too much and causes a lot of problems for the player. I'm also going to use this bot for a specific thing related to understanding leniency and what leniency means with a relatively difficult opponent. But when the bot itself isn't that hard to input, so that you can really see the difference without too much effort having to be put in to say, oh, this is not working. FANGBot is functional whether or not he has perfect inputs, but he does different things, which is important to recognize. As I've mentioned, I believe at some point, it is actually difficult to get this done perfectly, because everyone's timing, everyone's frames are going to be very slightly different in the game. And you have to be able to use that to figure out whether or not you have a different version of the bot than someone else, and whether or not you can make use of that in any way.
So right away I'm noticing that if I don't put on pressure on this bot, that he actually throws more, because as you said, some of his throws are at the beginning of the input. So if you don't interrupt his inputs, he does it more, which sort of rewards you for not really playing hyper aggressive, which is sort of the point of the way this is built, I'm guessing.
Yes, you have to learn that even though I can't make the bot do perfect things and actually put on a ton of real pressure, I can manipulate the flow of the bot itself and the scoring so that you don't get any points if you do random offense, and then the effort of trying to get points and the style of play that will lead to causes the bot to be able to do more of what it's supposed to be doing without just falling victim to a bunch of pressure from you. Some bots are good without that. They have enough pressure and mix-ups to be completely fine regardless, but f.a.n.g. is a good example of a bot that isn't quite like that.
So I learned that I probably shouldn't V-reversal his, that. I think that's his, is that just part of his V-skill?
That is not actually his V skill at all. That is his coward crouch, which is to press down and triple punch.
Wait,
and then from there he can press a kick.
Oh, right. Okay.
But it is not particularly well known, but he is actually plus after that.
So I noticed.
And therefore, he can just throw almost immediately. In fact, while it is not like super likely, per se, the bot does have a lot of rhythms in which throwing after that is a thing that he does.
You know, setting it to 5 bars apparently was the right move here, because I don't think we've gotten a single fight request saved from the very beginning. So let's see here. So what causes him to do the Rio Benda?
He has a, I believe it's action 2, where he just does a forward heavy kick and then cancels it. It specifically requires, of course, that he was doing one of his things that actually leads into a charge, and we didn't give him, I think only 3 of his actions naturally lead into charge stuff.
I see.
So whether or not he's actually doing that can be quite different.
And while I am no longer a bronze player, I'm really only going to be focusing on meaties. So I'll probably lose. Or not, depending how well the meetings go. But today, before the stream, we practiced for like 2 hours doing a specific EX Peach meeting, so that'll be my main aim. Ah, people and names. Oh, and getting that sweet bus money.
Is that what it is this week?
Yeah. Just the wall break.
For the sign break, the wall break is much harder.
Well, it depends on who you're playing.
This is fair.
Well, the good part is that f.a.n.g.bot was the one you were practicing on, so...
And I stunned. So... I feel
That's one
no
way to
shame
kill.
doing that. I mean, it's awfully nice of them to go right to the corner for me. It's a little laggy, but not enough to really affect things. And I got my fight money, so there's that. Well,
Thank you.
Rune Siren's fight money anyway.
Thank you for the fight.
Someone's fight money has been got.
I will accept your donation.
Gotta get that Minot money.
Eh?
Yeah, Minot's coming out in a little bit.
Well, I don't know about a
they
little bit.
back rolled, so I should practice my back roll one. Which
Well, I do
think-
have enough for a character at the moment.
I think after medium.
The back roll one was light kick into Lady Lincoln.
For EX Peach?
Yes.
Okay. Right, and for medium Peach, it's just that, I think. Although, I think I was too far away for that.
No, that is correct. Is that you don't normally get hurt for doing it.
Very nice.
That's so not nice for Jury. As I also play Jury in case you haven't followed our stream before, so I will always whine about Jury's Rio Dansatsu being complete garbage when it comes to her hitboxes. She did not make that easy to test out my meaties. Which I suppose is part of the practice.
Heavily the point. Okay, well, if we're assuming that you're not going to immediately get another chance at it, i.e. that we are going to get fewer matches tonight because of the stronger filter, what we're looking at mostly is the behavior of FANG as a general thing, and to see which patterns you can identify, and then to figure out how those patterns change if leniency is taken into account and if the inputs are altered very slightly. As I said, for other bots, leniency can mean a lot or a little. They can become either completely useless or really just about the same in terms of their goal. This one in particular is an advanced version of the one that Omni Rabbit and Amara have on their systems, in that he has extra prototype stuff that I gave to Rune Siren's account. To one, increase the amount of throws he does, and two, to increase the amount of back roll he does so that he moves himself around more.
Well, as I was saying before, where I am in ranked means that throws will be a lot more imperative because people like spamming throws a lot more. So if I try to take this bot at face value while still thinking about meaties generally, oh, so that does work. Well, that's good to know.
If you're already poisoned, you should completely ignore his horizontal floaty fireball. It can't do any damage. And it doesn't put you in stun.
While this is true, in a real match, it is in fact possible for Fang to throw that out simply because he realizes it will make you nervous. And if you say, I'm not going to get nervous, well, B-meter. Which does make some difference, if not much.
Fair enough.
It didn't feel like that match. A lot of his stuff isn't necessarily slow, but the recovery seems to be slower than most people's.
This is true.
So I feel like I have a little more leniency against Fong as a general thing in terms of like escaping or setting myself up into the right spacing.
Yes, escaping Fang is actually flatly easier.
And the other thing that I noted was that Ryobinda can get thrown just like Akuma's teleport. So I technically already have some of the instincts and reaction worked out for punishing Ryobinda.
Yes, it's a very strange move in that even though he's throwing it down and it's supposed to hit you immediately, you can, if you realize he was doing it, which is probably not on reaction, you can sometimes grab him first.
I know when I fought Fong in the past, part of my main issue was getting in on him. And I had the same problem with Dalsim. The arcing fireball is pretty effective in a lot of different ways. But now that I'm better at dashing and space control in general, I just really don't feel like I have as much of a problem figuring out where to be. Because, like, if I stay, like, in about this range, in this sort of middle footsie range, he can stop me with a lot of things, and I think a lot of them are safe for him. But his pushback isn't as large as some other people's. Is that right? Is that...
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
He has very little pushback on most of his moves actually, and it therefore allows you to put a lot of effort into holding a very specific position without him being able to push you out of that position. This is really good for eventually setting up the jump to get him, but he in turn has to cover the floor and then make sure that he can get you, which is why the bot's purpose is what it is. A Fang player is thinking to make sure they have put down the Ryobinda so that you cannot dash on them. and then just be prepared for the jump. Now, I didn't give him the brilliance of Fang's crouching heavy punch anti-air because the bot isn't really about that. But you can learn over time the spaces that are involved and what this means for you as a player, depending on your character.
Two. I have 2 points. How long does he have on recovery after his B skill?
The forward poison ball? I don't believe he has much recovery, which is actually odd because it looks like he does, but as you can see, if you watch until when he, for example, throws out his heavy punch after it, it's not really that long of recovery. And since most people aren't coming straight through it in the first place, it doesn't really come up. It's not a strict advantage to him in most situations, but it does help.
The reason I was asking was because I felt like I tried to react to it by dashing forward. So a lot of the times I would get hit by like a sleeve hit or something.
If you want to dash forward after it, you should almost assuredly hit only a light button or a throw.
I see.
Fortunately, most of Fang's mediums are relatively slow, so you will not lose out in the priority system that much. But he can sometimes throw out one of his own specials rather quickly. What you most need to worry about is him doing either the snake crawl or going into the coward crouch directly on your approach. But he will only do that if you have proven that you're willing to and able to dash through a lot of things. So it's not so easy for a Fang player to do anything on reaction. For them it's more of a, I threw the ball out, I know this person dashes at me, let me use one of my responses to stop that. Of course, this is extremely dependent on your character. For example, Chun-Li can generally get in on Fang by dashing in almost every situation. Ryu is also capable of this. Zangief, on the other hand, it's practically impossible. And this is purely due to the massive difference between their dash frames. Armika and Laura are in the middle of that, but fortunately they both either have, in Mika's case, a good set of pressure once she gets damage going, and in Laura's case, enough health and alternate ways through things like Ryubenda to just go with, I'm going to take an action as soon as I see that poison ball and ignore the fact that you might recover in time.
Something else I've noticed is that while most of his moves don't really push you back too much, the coward's crouch, the roll after that, it pushes you out just out of his throw range, unless you're in the corner. So if you try to be not defensive, because I mean the point of doing this is training defensiveness, but if you try to be too still while being defensive, you'll lose your opportunities to get points.
Yeah,
like that only
that's
works.
That's the primary thing you need to learn against Fang, just as a player in general. You have to defend for shorter amounts of time against Fang. I wouldn't say that you can easily dominate people with FANG if they are defending for a long time. But on the other hand, imagine if Capcom ever does do what he really needs and double the effect of his poison. He stops caring if you're defending or not. So the most successful player, especially if they don't have the life lead, is the one who decides to defend for a shorter amount of time and figure out what they want to do against FANG on reaction to seeing one of his moves. And that's what the bot is intended to mostly teach you. Because even though you don't get points for responding to any specific move other than the Ryobenda itself, there are definitely things that you need to understand about his options that pop up only if you're specifically trying to move really quickly after he does something. And those things are the things that will allow you to get in on him to cause the situations in which you can get points, even though those are not the point systems.
And honestly, the other thing I felt like it was helping me with, I'll explain it afterwards. Hello, Ryu. Boy, do I not miss you.
Nice stage though.
Oh, for sure. This stage is awesome.
Yes, it's one that I'm considering whether I want to purchase.
Given that Amara tends to be your training partner, I don't think you'll have to. I'll know that one of the other meaties that you really need to work on as a general thing, because it so seldom comes to mind for you, is that the crouching heavy punch directly after doing your V reversal.
The crouching heavy punch?
Yes, you can do crouch heavy punch after your V reversal on quick risers.
I see.
But this is relatively difficult to remember to do because V reversal is not usually a situation where you're thinking, oh, I should release. It's also the only timing I think where you ever do that one, but it's also the only good meaty from it.
They're a good opponent,
And
so
as
I
you
had
can
to
see-
get the extra round there. Ah, I keep doing standing heavy punch for my meaty instead of crouching.
Well, here, you can have an extra second round.
That didn't work. That. Definitely didn't miss this.
Welcome to bronze. You have to wait till I get out.
No, it's technically good. Because one thing that bronze tier does teach you is how to deal with... Because it's not that bronze players tend to be defensive. That's not normally the problem. The problem is that they do a lot of weird things to be perceived as defensive, even though they might not necessarily be.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you ever do go to a tournament, you've got to get through bronze too. First round pools, you don't want to get eliminated.
You could be lucky and have your entire pool and your entire path through the tournament all be killers.
For certain definitions of lucky, but yes, this is true.
But then, of
not
course,
something,
you'd only have 2 matches.
not something one should rely on.
Well, a lot of people would be happier going 0-2 against Daigo and Mago than Random Guy 27.
Oh, absolutely.
This is not in any way a jab at Random Guy 27. That was a good match that one time.
You've actually met a random guy 27, huh?
Yes, I have. He was
I
an
approve of
awesome
this.
kid. At least I think he was a kid. Or was it Random Dude? Whichever.
Basically the same.
I'm not sure. Dudes and guys are kind of different.
I suppose.
Again, going a little more all out so I can get another round.
That is also one of the problems that bots help you solve that the CPU generally does not. It's really important over time to have something that acts at least predictably enough so that you recreate the same situation with some regularity. And this is the main reason why we offer this rather than saying, oh, just go play the CPU, or just go play your friend. Those are not the same experience overall. Because what the bot does is give you the same situation with a lot of variation, whereas this, as soon as you are like, okay, I figured out what to do against you, and then your opponent just randomly stops doing any of it and you don't know what to do.
Yeah, I have that problem a lot.
My timing was 1 frame too perfect, really, and
Oh, your media only works when you miss it a frame or two?
yeah.
I see.
No, it was just him jumping out.
Was it? I should have
Yeah.
gone for the... No, I knew he would have jumped out. I really should have gone for the 5 medium punch instead. Oh well. Well, that's why I'm practicing against... What was this Ryu's name? I don't know.
Can't help you. Sadly not random guy 27.
Big Enron.
Big
Enron, yes.
I see. Anyway, so back to f.a.n.g. and FANGBot.
Yes, and now we're going to have a little explanation of leniency, and I'll have you change one of the inputs. It's relatively easy to change, and it has double leniency in it, so it doesn't actually matter if it doesn't work out that well.
Sure. Which one?
It should be action 1. You should replay action 1 by itself just to make sure that that is a down forward heavy punch sort of thing.
Down forward,
Followed
heavy punch,
by
down forward,
either-
yes. To back these skills.
So, right, so what you're looking for mostly is to change this to, you can try for the heavy punch plus medium punch, but again, I don't actually think it matters too much. It just changes how often the quick rises, which isn't that strong and uses this buff. So for the sake of the stream and doing it quickly, let's just do this instead. The key part here is that you have to start the recording by not pressing down forward perfectly, but by pressing forward for just a fraction of a second, obviously. So you're basically going forward to down forward. Heavy punch. Down back, hit V skill once or twice, and then hit medium punch once or twice, and then end it. You can end it like all within one actual play of the sleeves. So him doing the move, he can fully recover from that in a moment.
So forward, down, forward. Then it looks like down, heavy punch.
Down
Or-
forward heavy punch should cause him to do that command normal.
Okay.
The key from there is to go to down back quickly and tap the skill once or twice, tap medium punch once or twice, and then end it. You can do this all really fast if you want. Because we're showing off leniency and what leniency means as a general thing.
And then I spam back B skill a lot.
Back V skill a couple times, then back medium punch a couple times.
It specifically must be down back, but yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so
You also
not
don't have to care about how much you do it.
cool.
So he's charging down back and he's filling it with V skills and medium punches.
And you should obviously hold down back while you end the recording as well.
Oops.
So once you get used to the input, it's usually not too hard to do. But again, we're showing off leniency and the general behaviors that leniency causes.
Nope. Oops.
And for those of you doing recordings, as I've often said, I really suggest that rather than putting yourself through a ton of work every time you make a recording to get it perfect, especially if you're fixing one that you have already been working with, just for new experience, just leave it like that. Just see what he does when you leave it like that. It will be fairly clear whether or not it's actually useful or not. And then you can just proceed.
Well, I don't have the medium punches in.
I didn't see the forward before the down forward at the beginning either.
No, that's there.
Okay.
So now all you have to do is turn on some other action, probably action 3, because that normally helps simplify the process. And if the forward and the down forward are interacting correctly, he'll occasionally do Sotoja.
Well, I haven't seen it so far.
And this is again a matter of leniency and understanding what exactly leniency is giving you. Because it looks to me as if it should work, given that if he's doing the Nishikyu at all, it means that the amount of charge that he has from action 3 is in fact enough to do special moves. So this is a way to test whether or not you have something working correctly. In fact, most bots that I've created have this sort of measuring stick input in it that is actually meaningful and useful for the bot, but it's also really useful for inputting the bot and learning about bot inputs. This is going to be one of the things that we will enter in our challenges when we create them, because this is a relatively easy thing to do and to use for calibration. And we will end up using it to test edge shifting and other things, and basically you turn on the 2 inputs and see if a certain thing ever happens, and if it does, then it means that the correct thing has been input. So for now, if this were one of our execution challenges, this would be exactly how it would work. He would have this input, and then I would tell the person attempting to do it, try to input forward, down, forward, heavy punch really quickly. And if you are successful, he will become able to do Sotoja as a general thing.
So I think that this was not successful, generally, so I'm going to take another whack at it. Might be because the forward to down forward is slightly too slow, maybe?
That's likely to be the reason. And again, when we start to develop the bot input challenges / execution, basically what we intend to tighten up your execution, and has not yet been named. This will be exactly the sort of thing that we will be doing, and we can work on how exactly to convey it to the person. For example, the most basic form of this would be to just try to put in a heavy punch.
I keep getting it down. That might be... Sure, let's go with that. Because now I know that I've done the forward, down, forward as generally quickly as I can.
Or at least as quickly as you currently believe you can.
Well, yeah.
This is actually a really important skill to learn to get better at this game. Because as much as there is talk that, oh, there's not enough execution, certain characters actually require some really tight stuff relative to when you hit certain buttons and directions together. Characters with much easier inputs, you may never even encounter a true challenge of your ability to look at what you're doing and change the input itself. For example, in this case, the problem here is most likely that you're trying not to hit the heavy punch until you are sure that you're holding down forward already. But this is a neurological problem because you don't actually do this. In fact, if you've ever tried to do most of Chun-Li's main combos, you become aware really quickly that you have to hit things in a way that your brain registers as on the same frame, but they're not. You hit the standing medium punch and down to begin charge for her spinning bird kick for one of her combos in what often feels like the same frame, but if you look back at the recording, it is not. And therefore stand medium punch does come out. So in this case, you're facing a similar situation where you should really be trying to do a forward to down forward and pressing the heavy punch as if it is part of the forward motion rather than the down forward motion. And you'd be fairly interested to find out that a lot of the time this ends up with the heavy punch on the down forward input.
Yeah, there's still an extra frame between the forward and down forward there. So
Right,
that's
and
probably the issue.
The more time you spend doing this, the more you'll become aware of just how fast something is relative to how fast it actually feels. And this is really important for learning certain things in high-level play, or at least learning to maximize things on your own character without pure muscle memory grinding all of the time. So in this case, I'd say that you need to specifically try to hit the heavy punch too early until you find that sweet spot where even though it feels like you hit it too early, it doesn't actually look that way in the inputs.
So let's try that.
And the good thing about FANGBot and why it is easy to see is because with command normals, you immediately get the feedback. You get to realize, oh, he did this instead. Because in FANG's case, specifically, forward heavy punch is not a command normal. But down forward heavy punch is. So your aim when doing this is to hit forward heavy punch. In your own mind, you're hitting forward heavy punch.
There, I did it. Exactly the way you said I would get it.
Now, what does the down? What is the purpose of having the forward before the down forward heavy punch? What does that create?
In this case, if you turn it back on to playback, it will probably show you, which is, and if it doesn't, then we probably need to rethink how this is done because it's kind of a problem. Because if you have got it right, and he doesn't spend too much time jumping over people's heads as he is now doing,
Stupid birds.
he will gain the capacity to do the sotoja bit, which is basically, well, this is actually easier to demonstrate by showing it off directly.
Which was Sotoja's input?
I'm going to actually have Just Fine show that off directly.
Hmm?
Basically, you should, in this case, hold down back first and then do what I was telling you before. So in action 1, just hold down back for quite some time before you actually do what I was mentioning. So you're not trying to start the recording with that quickly, you're doing it from a down back. There's no need to stop the recordings between it because you're not really actually trying to get this right. You're just pointing out something. So as you can see, if it's fast enough and there's enough down back, he will actually do Sotoja even though you've hit the down forward at the time you hit the punch. But he'll only do it if you actually pressed forward for a moment before. If you look carefully at the inputs, as long as you don't reach forward before the down forward heavy punch, he doesn't do the Sotoja.
Oh, is this a buffering trick with forward charge move? That it's,
Basically.
There's a certain amount of buffer where it will still read the heavy punch as a charge release due to the forward. Okay.
Yes, it is.
There, like that. Oh. Instinct. Well, muscle memory more so. Anyway.
So, the aim overall is to do that really quickly as the beginning of one action. You could practice it this way, and it wouldn't be a terrible thing to do it this way because then you'd understand the actual input you're doing well enough to probably put it at the beginning of something. But as you can see, well, a viewer obviously doesn't know what it feels like to do this, but anyone watching or watching this on YouTube later, feel free to boot up yours and try this yourself. The feelings are, most people find them surprising, especially if they're not too familiar with fighting games. They find the timing surprising. The reason for this is a lot to do with the fact that if you're familiar with basic human anatomy in certain ways, your left and right hands are controlled by different parts of your brain. And these two different halves of your brain have a communication zone in between them. So a lot of the perceptions of whether and what your hands are doing, your brain learns to coordinate these over time, but the thing that's actually measuring the timer is not in the middle, it's actually on one side. So that side of the brain can, on occasion, when you're learning an entirely new input, hit the things on the wrong frame because it's actually going faster than the other hand. This can actually make playing fighting games a little bit more complicated for people who are left-handed because of something else, but it's not necessarily because of that spatial thing. Because left-handedness does not affect which half of your brain is controlling particular things, just how dexterous you are with the hand and how much you trust it. So a lot of this comes down to feeling comfortable with pressing certain directions on a pad, how much you trust your fingers, and the attempt to coordinate two buttons that you think you're touching at the same moment, but you're not actually doing at the same moment.
I find that the other problem is, especially if you're like a pad player, the way you hit the button for your D-pad, the way you change directions is totally different depending on which direction you're facing. So you actually have to figure out like a physical like positioning difference, not just a timing difference, and how you hit it, because your brain will like automatically try to mimic what you're doing on the other half of the D-pad. So it can make going from one side to the other a little tougher to do. So when you're training on it, you want to look for, okay, where is my finger hitting these D-pads? Where is the pressure at? Because that's how I personally have diagnosed my own issues with getting things to work out correctly.
Yes, when you are specifically trying to enter a bot as quickly as possible, and you just want to get to practicing with the bot, just pick whatever makes you most comfortable. Change around buttons so that you can hit them more quickly. Make sure you're on the right side of the screen for whatever it is you want to do. But when you're doing things like challenges, it is often important to make sure that you can do a challenge from both sides, because if you are a pad player, or even if you're a stick player in a lot of cases, the actual input you're doing mentally is not the same. And why it's super important for people to realize that a move you can do from one side is not necessarily something you can do from the other side. For example, in this case, I would bet you that part of the reason why you have an issue with this particular recording as we were doing it is that if you try to do it from the right side, there is more of a delay in terms of how quickly you can go forward to down forward when you're on the left side of the screen than there is if you are going on the right side of the screen. And this happens to a lot of us, and it's related to how we block in the game. To the point where some people are even affected such that you can figure out which meaty to use on them, but depending on which side of the screen they're on, because on the left side they defend, and on the right side they do invincible reversals. So you don't even have to specifically figure them out or guess or bait them. You just know, oh, I put them on this side of the screen. They have a tendency toward this particular type of wake up on the side of the screen.
Huh.
So here we go. But in this case, let's move on to actually having Fang do this now. So I think in this case, you probably have better luck with this if you jump over so that Fang is on the right side of the screen. And you can test that out yourself a couple times from the down back, but overall, I expect it's going to be a little bit easier to get the 1 into 3 working if you do the recording, the forward into down forward heavy punch, if you do that from this side. But of course, remember to keep the same pressing the heavy punch too early feeling. And also, everyone should make sure to, like, another thing you can do is that if you realize that when you try to hit forward, you end up hitting down forward, change it entirely. Try to hit up forward, see what happens. Because there's no right or wrong way to hit things on your own controller. So if it takes telling yourself mentally, I need to hit up forward, in order to get yourself to hit regular forward, then use that muscle memory, abuse that until you have learned to do it without thinking about it at all, and you're probably better off. The same thing goes, it's sort of like typing, where some people know that they're supposed to hit a particular key with a particular finger, but for whatever reason they just don't. It could
That
be
summarizes my
long
entire
nails.
typing style.
It could be having a finger that's much longer than you expect. It could be having small hands.
Presidential hands.
Presidential hands.
Well, so what I was noticing when we were doing the holding back and going forward test was there was nothing wrong with the having a down forward input between the forward and the heavy punch. Like, that worked out fine. So I think it might actually be a problem in 3.
I'm not sure, because it would be difficult for 3 to be completely wrong. But you could test it. 3 is really easy to record, so it's quite useful to try with. And it's really lenient, so we can use it as a good benchmark. All 3 requires for you to do is hit up forward and be still, as if doing an instant overhead. Hold down back immediately, and hold it for a while, and then stop the recording. In fact, while I do tend to suggest putting the recording end close to the point where he landed before he actually recovers, you don't have to do that either. Obviously, it shouldn't be too long, because then he stands still for too long, but it mostly depends on how quickly your hands get back to down back after jumping. For people who play charged characters, this is usually relatively easy, because that's how we learn to play. But you'd be surprised how difficult this can be for some people's input. Which is why I would almost be impressed by the Fantasy Strike method of handling this. But that seems to have a flaw that I'm not comfortable with, but I won't mention it because I haven't played the game and I'm not going to go bad-mouthing it without being sure about things. So yes, if you want to check and make sure that there's something potentially wrong in 3, That's not an issue at all. But you should also remember that the amount of time the game takes on a particular input is not exactly determined by the amount of things that show up on the screen when you do it. Also, I'm fairly sure you can't do that recording from too close, just in case anyone is wondering why it's been being done a certain way. That's 3. That is, when you're doing 3, you can't do it from too close. 1 is a different beast altogether. Okay. So yes, while it may seem like it's difficult to input bots, you do have to recognize that a lot of the time, the things that you're seeing when you attempt to input bots are things that are within your own playstyle as problems without you realizing it, and they are probably affecting your actual capacity to do moves. As you said, there may be a problem in 3, so let's go ahead and fix that.
Alright, so you said up B skill and then just do nothing except hold down back?
Hold down back. Yep.
Alright.
Of course, the issue being that, as I mentioned, if you're too close, it won't actually count as that, but...
That should be enough for the charge.
The reason I didn't previously believe that there was anything specifically off about it is that if you do it right, then he becomes able to throw the medium punch Nishikyu balls without any real difficulty. So if he can throw the Nishikyu, but can't do the Sotoja, then it's because 1 is not perfect yet.
Well, alas, I will give it one last attempt and then we'll probably give up on it for now. Right.
Above all else, the thing to do is to try to break your own preconceptions about how long something takes and how it must be done. It's easy to tell yourself this must be fast.
It happened. It happened on the one time, so victory. It's not the perfect input, but we'll have the full inputs and stuff on 2-mk.org/bot on Sunday as usual.
Yes.
So, if you want the full details on FANGBot, that it will be when you want to look for it. So let's give it one more go here. Maybe get a match. And then I think we'll call it a night. So For everyone else who may have joined us and had not seen the beginning of the stream, the point system for FANGBot is teching a throw, or at least hitting a throw right when he throws, punching it with your throw, if that makes any sense to you. It'll be more clear on the site. Punishing Ryobinda and punishing Sotoja.
We may also make it so that there is something for punishing sweep, because there is a specific spacing that I'm experimenting with that will allow him to stay out fairly far, and his sweep, while punishable by a lot of people, if he's at a specific range, it becomes rather difficult. So I have to finalize tests on whether or not it's easy to just stand there, because if you stand in the range to punish sweep easily, this is also the range where he tends to throw you. And he does the throw first, so likely to be quite effective in a lot of ways. However, this will probably be the easiest point, so if you're messing around with it yourself. This version of the bot does not have the tendency to sweep as much as one that I've been testing with, but you'll see. As for his other inputs, as you've seen, 3 is really simple. 3 is just a matter of a jump, basically. His 4, I believe, is modified now. The version you're seeing here may not be the final version. It's basically just down, medium, kick, throw. And his action 2 is a forward heavy kick cancelled into a powered crouch. And action 5 is probably the most complicated one, so I probably won't discuss it in a lot of detail, but the short version of it is to just do a throw into a sweep and have that work out for you. Or is it? No, it's sweep first then throw, because the sweep itself is doing the Ryobenda. The other Ryobenda. There may be a variant of this one to make it easier, because he does have quite a few timing intensive inputs, even though his inputs themselves are relatively short and not a lot of button pressing, except I guess one.
But yes, in order to get your points from FANGBot for the throw, you really gotta be mobile and willing to, like, be right next to him. So if anything, it should desensitize you from getting thrown. I really should not be reversal that though, given it plus. I think I would honestly make the like hardest version of this bot be throw points only.
Well, that is the plan, but it is really, really hard to do, so there may need to be some consideration for sanity there.
Well, we have a insane mode, right? So I mean...
Yes.
Sanity is overrated.
I can't tell if I'm poisoned on this stage.
You are.
No, like, even
Well,
when
that is
I'm not
kind of the
poisoned,
point
I'm
of
pretty purple.
that's why it's his stage. Fang does not have an innate sinister theme, but if he ever did, it would be the stage is soon.
Instead, his theme is glorious.
There's also a tricky input that you might be seeing that allows him to do EX Nishikyu. You should not expect to get this into your own bot. It's really weird. It is an edge shifted plank, which is kind of silly. So even when you see others using this particular bot on stream, it is extremely unlikely that you're going to see what is the result of that, basically, because it's among our sillier inputs, basically.
1. I think that was 2.
Well, again, the points are not actually for throwing him. So we are also considering that when you throw him, you might also lose points, but that is again, potential for insane extreme versions. Because he does have a specific pattern in which he throws. He should only have 2 throw inputs in the bot as a general thing. And they're not really masked by a lot, so it's more so about not reactions, but learning to look for the things that tend to lead to him throwing and being ready for those, even though the throws themselves are hidden within other quick things.
Like, the reason why I'm always throwing him after the coward's crouch roll is because I know that's the end of a certain input and the beginning of an input will go. And since I know that the throw is at the beginning of the input, well, obviously I'm going to try and throw after that. So...
Yes, that's basically correct. The problem with doing that is that the coward crouch itself is
plus.
safe. So the idea is that you are supposed to block and then quote unquote react to him throwing you, because you do have a large window for the throw tech. If you end up throwing him, is an indication that he didn't go for the throw, but you still did, which means technically you reacted too early. You weren't actually reacting to a throw happening or anything that really felt like one. You were just hitting it because it was at the end of coward crouch and therefore it was time to hit it.
I see.
Which is why at the extreme high level, throwing him yourself is probably going to be negative points for you.
So that would not be a point. So are we going to mark the point depending on who has their tech quote, I guess?
No, that's going a little bit far. Because in general, if you end up in that situation and you are the one that pressed your throw early, because of the way that throws and normals interact in the game, you shouldn't necessarily count it as meaningful or not meaningful. Your opponent set up a situation in which they were definitely planning to throw. You definitely felt that situation coming, and you pressed the button. But if it is that you really are just mashing it, then you will end up throwing him at times when he does not do a particular follow-up, and it will be really obvious.
Okay. Well, and I think you were also thinking of different input for the more perfect advanced version too?
Yes, but your current version, aside from... Actually, no. Yours is the one that has all the correct inputs as of now.
Well, other than
Well, not
one.
other than the missing medium punches in one, but those aren't actually strictly necessary for the bot's flow. That's more so for spacing. So at the moment, given the character you're playing, it's approximately accurate. But no, there are definitely some inputs that could be done via blinking. They could be done via very tight timings at the beginning of the recordings and so on to make the bot more sinister in terms of your f.a.n.g. matchup practice. But in terms of the actual bot points, you probably don't need to use any of the more advanced ones. But it's always going to be good in this bot's case to try, and that's why I mentioned the leniency. For the most part, if you attempt the more advanced inputs and they go in but the timing is off, the bot will function about the same as if you didn't get them in, rather than having its functionality changed meaningfully. And therefore you'll be able to just proceed anyway and refine them at later times, or when you've gotten used to some other thing about the bot and gotten more skilled at dealing with him as a general thing, but you don't feel as if you know the f.a.n.g. matchup well, you can increase the bot's effectiveness at forcing you to deal with matchup things by perfecting those inputs.
I wonder if I can grab Sotoka.
I don't believe so. Well, did you mean after you block it? Because, yeah. Although I will note that the EX one is only -3, and this is not always the best idea. Sotoja's issue is specifically that it has a lot of negative frames. I mean, a lot. But from certain distances, I wouldn't call it safe, but there are certain characters that can't do very much about it. Like for Lara, it's fairly trivial to deal with. And Chun-Li can, with ES meter, punish pretty much anything. But Sotoja's frame data is interesting in that the medium punch version is only -9, whereas the heavy punch is -10, but the light punch is -11. Now why exactly this is unclear, but this does happen sometimes with charge moves for various reasons. For this reason, we didn't specifically put a lot of effort into giving him an EX one, but the advanced version, as you mentioned, would be different in terms of the initial input, and he would in fact have the EX. And the bot would not always have meter, because as you can tell, he doesn't really use meter for much as is, but he should build it up fast enough to make the variability happen. But at the moment, the version you have doesn't have enough of the inputs required for this to be a thing that you care about. this weekend is going to be a relatively easy and quiet weekend in the FGC. There are no such things as completely quiet in the FGC anymore. The internet has brought us all together and given us tons of information on where the latest tournament is going on. As you know, Street Fighter, Guilty Gear, Injustice, all that action is almost always available somewhere.
Like at Just Buy News on Twitter. Shameless
But for now-
self-promotion.
For now, the actual big tournaments for this weekend, those of you who are following the Brazilian scene should know that Fight in Rio 2017 is happening. So that's tomorrow. But otherwise, for the most part, it's a pretty quiet weekend, so you'll basically have that to watch, and anything else that happens will be streamed from somewhere else.
What do I do on the delayed rise for the EX wingless landing?
That's a topic for another time.
Alrighty.
But do remember that your EX wingless is a little different. Not in terms of the knockdown, but again, another time. So the final point I was making is that for those of you who somehow up to now have not managed to find the time to watch the Evo finals, it will be re-aired on Disney XD at 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And since there's not much else directly to watch in terms of tournament this weekend, you can go relive the hype if you did watch it.
And watch Tokido be a genius. Not an evil genius anymore, but still a genius.
Well, he was never an evil genius. He just hangs out with him now.
Alright, he was Red Bullet before, I think. Yeah.
Was he? I thought he was Mad Catz and then spent a long time unsponsored. But he's a fox now.
I have no idea what that was. Oh, okay. More fight money.
My Nika skill has increased.
Well, now I learned a thing today. I had no idea how that would go. Anyway, thank you for watching. FANGBot will be at 2-mk.org/bots on Sunday. And this is just fine. And really in signing out.